Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, or good evening, or good morning, wherever you are in the world. Whatever you're doing, thank you for listening. This is 21 Virtues, and today I've got a great guest. Joel Arcieri. You're going to hear a little bit. I did say that right, actually.
You did.
He's going to tell me that in a minute. They said Joel. Joel Arcieri, who we met in a coffee shop. We hit it off. And I went down on his podcast. I met his team down there in South Carolina. We had a great time. And he's got a very unique story. And he's one of the only pastors that found out that I actually was a medium and kind of was fascinated and accepted me for who I was and didn't have any religious bigotry. But we hit it off. But he does so much more. And I want you to hear his story of trial, his story of triumph, so that it really gives you guys out there listening that are maybe thinking about impact in life, changing, transforming your life. So, Joel Arcieri, my friend, welcome to 21 Virtues. How are you?
Oh, I'm great. So good to be here with you, John. It's just honestly.
Joe, I should have said that at the beginning because you've got a good accent, a Scottish accent.
It's so wonderful, you know. No, I'm good, man. It's fun. It's even fun, just like you said, talking about how we met, because it was so different. I think in where I was in my life and where I am now, you know, being in ministry. And I think this is just the kind of the fishbowl of it all. When you're in ministry, you feel self-important. And I think that's a whole nother conversation of, I honestly believe that
that's another podcast, ladies and gentlemen.
How we have structured American church, right, in American Christianity, with the pastorate, and how when you puff up this pastor, he is the end all be all. You either are sadly disappointed by what they do with their life because they're just as human as you and just as fallen. They're just called to a higher standard. Yes, but they still experience this just as much. The only person who's ever experienced the same things and didn't sin was Christ. Hence why he's Christ and we're not. But then the other alternative is they get puffed up by all the acclaim and all the belief in them. And then so they hide any of the sins. And then they embrace it, and it becomes an egoism kind of thing. And then you see a lot of those bigger, as they rise, they fall from grace, right? And so, to me, being out of it, it was actually really humbling and freeing to not have to indulge in that self-importance and be puffed up in that way. So when I tell people I used to be a pastor, I used to be a pastor. It's not, I'm a pastor.
Oh. I remember that when you said to me I used to be a pastor. I'm like, oh no, here we go. This is he's going to find out what I do. But it was completely different. And then your story of your pastorship and the trauma that you had through it. Tell us about that, because that was amazing.
Yeah. So you have to know my story. Obviously, everyone's begins, and having a master's in counseling, this is what you do all the time. How was your childhood? What happened that formed you? Which is true. It does. It does.
Did you have a problem with your mother or your father?
No,
yeah,
I mean, both,
the pen goes down.
But when I was younger, right, I grew up in the church. So my dad was a pastor. My mom was a pastor's wife. And the irony was, my mom was very much like not the typical stay within the lines pastor's wife. I mean, she drove fun cars, took them to auctions, got new ones. She was a hairstylist. She was no nonsense, blunt, didn't care. And then my dad's this kind of meek, kind guy. And so I got this really interesting exposure to a certain type of, so you don't have to be, everyone needs to be perfect and wear the suit and tie. And it was interesting. But then I also saw, because I was the youngest of three kids, I saw how people would act. And then I don't know what it was. And I think it was just the Lord. He gifted me with the ability to see a situation and then think, I wonder if it's going to go this way, then see it happen and then store that for forever. Right. I couldn't retain math, but I could retain personal behavior and human engineering. And that was really what it was. It was social engineering. And so I learned that. And so I liked that. I was fascinated by people in relationships. And so I kind of wanted to do psychology as a result. And so from an early age, I thought psychology is interesting. That'd be really cool. So even in high school, I was saying, I want to be a psychologist. And people are going, who is this freshman in high school who already has his idea of his life picked out? And that was the thing. I was so sure of myself in a lot of ways in my ideas for what I would do. It would elevate people's esteem of me, and then I would get puffed up in my pride and my arrogance, right? Because people are going, look at this kid. He's a leader. He already knows what he wants to do. And I'm going, yeah, that's right. I am a leader. And I had people saying, you're going to be a leader. People are going to follow you. You're right. They will. And so I had this underlying arrogance in my life. And I think it showed itself from a young age too. I mean, I was a guy, the internet was exploding. So pornography was readily available and you could hide it now. And so I got addicted to that, and I was promiscuous, and I was arrogant even in my own life to say, I know that Christianity says this isn't right, but I am so good at playing the part that no one will know that this is the case, right? And so that was that building arrogance, and I think that was just a big theme, I would say, in my early life, before the trauma that happened later. And so as a result, I put myself in some really bad situations. I put myself in positions where that people could be taken advantage of, right? And even just as a high schooler, and it was just not a good decision in my life, right? And I'm not going to get into crazy detail with that just because I don't want to, but it was the arrogance of I can do whatever I want and everything still serves me, and then realizing that later on I put myself in positions that I wasn't in control in some way, right? And then I had to wrestle with that later, because I was so sure of I'm always in control. And then later went, actually, I wasn't. And that's okay for me to heal from that. And then that was also helped me heal from the later trauma too. And so that building arrogance of who I am. And so I thought, I'm going to do psychology. So then I went to school for psychology. I went to the top psychology program in Virginia at Christopher Newport. And then I was like, all right, I'm going to get my master's in psychology, and then I'll get my doctorate. And then I met my wife, and I went, okay, well, I can't go to school full time because we don't have enough money, because we just got young and married, and we really loved each other, wanted to be together. And so I said, all right, well, I'll just do masters and see what happens. And so I said, I'm never going to be a pastor because I don't want to be like my dad. I'll do psychology. And then so I was doing psychology, master's, marriage and family therapy, and all the while continually learning about people. And I mean, like I said, when I was younger, I was manipulating people. I was testing hypotheses. Hey, if I do this, what will they say? Hey, if I do this, what will they say? And I building that arrogance, controlling the narrative, always being this kind of puppet master of my life. And so when I was finishing my master's, though, I was like, I was a assistant manager of a retail place, and then I got fired because I didn't do well, because I was just arrogant, thinking like, whatever, there's no consequences. And I didn't serve the business well, and they let me go. But then I immediately jumped into another job because someone said, hey, I need you here. So I never really had to deal with my consequences of my pride and my insignificance.
Yeah.
So I jumped into that. So no actual dealing there. And then I went to another
role. And it comes back
to
bite you later on, obviously.
Obviously, yes. And so I got another job, and then I was waiting, and then the church that I had been discipled in and had been there for a long time, and my wife had moved up because we both loved the church. And I was even discipled by the pastor and the executive or worship pastor, and they even called out some of my pride at one point. And I did a time of discipline and working through that. Did that really pay off? I don't know. But then they finally hired me on, and so now I'm a pastor. And I'm going, I said I would never be a pastor. Now I'm a pastor. Great. And so I was a pastor, but I was still building that arrogance, still building the narrative, the puppet master, and I was frustrated because I couldn't be in control, and I wanted to be in control. But when you're a pastor under a senior pastor, it's his vision. And then I would start to kind of drum up this frustration, and okay, why is he not listening? Why I don't like this vision? Why are we doing this? This is self-serving. And the irony is, in the church, you will always find a home for a group of people who think that a certain group of people in the church are not doing it right. So it's really easy to still foster and nurture a negative perspective on yourself and the world around you and people, and an arrogant view of yourself in the church, because there is always going to be a denomination that will look at another denomination, or even a subgroup within a denomination that will look at another group and say, well, they're not doing it right. And then because of that, you can excuse anything that you're thinking that's sinful in your heart or your life. And I did that. So we're not caring enough about theology at this church. And why are we doing all this like fun modern worship? Like I'm a songwriter. I want to be intentional. I want to be intentional about what we're saying. I want to be a shepherd, which I was, but it was freeing me up to still nurture that arrogance, nurture the puppeteering of my life. Right. And so eventually I said, you know what? I'm done with this, because I asked them, look, hey, we're in debt. We could use some money. And they said, we're not going to pay you more for your position. And I went, well, great, fine. Deuces, I'll see you later. I'll find someone else who will hire me. Now, I will say, at that time where I was at that church, they're still, I don't want to speak negatively and bash, but the church itself did not have good leadership in some ways too, because they're fallen people. They're human, right? I was surprised, and I had to deal with it later. I'm not surprised now, but I was gaslit as a young pastor. I was emotionally manipulated. Other people were on the staff too, because it was when a certain person came in, it changed the culture, and they gaslighted a lot of us. And even they puffed me up and said, you know what? Yeah, he's never going to give you your shot, so go prove him wrong. Go somewhere else. Really, in the end, they was just getting rid of me, and he was gassing me up, which is not good. Like that's not a good mentality. It's a sinful mentality to say, "Hey, prove him wrong." What? No. If Scripture says live in harmony with others as much as it depends on you,
it's a little bit like the Garden of Eden and the serpent and the apple.
Exactly.
It's very much the same kind of idea. Yeah.
So he said, "Do that," and so I left with this puffed up arrogance, right? And then come back in the conquering hero. Words he actually said to me. So then I went, all right, I'm going to find this church. I found a church that was, this older pastor had been there for 36 years, started the church, and he was passing it on. And they wanted a worship person to take it into the next level, who would do like counseling and associate pastoring, and then they were going to bring a lead pastor. And so I come in there and I tell them in the interview process a lot about my past, right? Let them know what I used to do in my life and where I am now. And they were going to pay me more than this place. So I said, great, I'll move up to Delaware. Why not? One, Delaware is a terrible place. I mean, unless people who are listening to this live there, but you probably would agree. It's why I live in Delaware. Just don't. But anyway, I
think people go there for the taxes, don't they?
That's really the only reason you live there. It's because the taxes are so great. So I went up there and I came in with a Messiah complex. And then here's the other thing. As I was entering that place, the guy who was leaving, the old lead pastor, puffed me up as well and put down the elders as he was talking to me. That person's a problem elder. He has some of this in his past. No, this isn't good about that person. Here are these people. I mean, he was just filling me in on all the dirt, and I hadn't even accepted the job yet. So I'm going, all right, heck yeah, I am going to be the Messiah, because I'm going to come in and this guy already thinks I'm going to do it. And so the arrogance was on full display internally. Yeah. And so when I got there, and it was an older church, and I was spending money to revitalize them and bring them into the 21st century, which I will say, I gave them a damn good sound system that was personally custom built for them. I gave them a very cheap but custom built drum enclosure that was basically a friendly gesture from a friend back in Virginia, like at almost no cost. I mean, it was insane. And I did all that for them. And then I was still arrogant though. And so essentially what happened was there were people in the church who really didn't like me. They didn't like my attitude. They also didn't like that I was someone who was probing, which the irony, someone needed to really probe my life, but I was a prober. I always would say, let's get to the bottom of this, right? What's really going on? And they knew I was going to threaten the kind of the thing that they had been able to do while this older pastor was just tired and didn't really care about dealing with a lot of this stuff. They were able to get away with things. And I was a prober. The irony later, one of the people that was part of saying he really needs to go, his stuff came out later that he was doing some inappropriate things, right? So the irony was I was probing and people started to see that and go, this might not be good for us. And so they said, hey, stuff in your past disqualifies you from being a pastor. So we're going to let you go. And then
let me ask you this, though. Where was their level? Where was their being Christian and everything that they are and spouting scripture and everything else? I don't seem to. Where's their act of forgiveness?
So I believe it was because they said, so one, either laziness and lack of courage to deal with having a journey along with someone that, just something in their past is a big deal. Yes. But it was 13 years ago, right? This is a long time ago. This person's no longer that person, right? Now, there could be things in their life that they need to work on now as a result, which I found out I did. But that forgiveness is, hey, Christ has, and this is the thing, when they said they were going to let me go, the church was like, what do you mean something in his past everyone has something in their past. What are you talking about? What do you mean? Where's grace? Where's forgiveness? Where's the cross?
Exactly. That's my point.
I was obstinate. I was so angry, right? To have them be telling them from stage while I watched at home. And so people started calling me and asking me and said, yeah, they're not really, this is all that happened. And I didn't tell them the complete story, but said, this is all that happened. And they're going, hey, this isn't good. And so then the church goes, you know what? Fine. All right, Joel, you want to do this? Next week, live stream tells every single deepest, darkest sin I've ever really done in my life from the stage on a live stream while I watched at home with my wife. And that was it. And I mean, they threw words at me, names at me, talked about
And you had no
about
power of this. You had no power to come back. I mean, you couldn't stop this. This was...
Yep.
Wow.
And so, I mean, you're just...
How did you feel at that moment? When you're sitting there with your wife and the live stream comes on, what was going through your mind?
I sat with my mouth open in disbelief. And I was so angry. I was just... So it was unfair, but it was also, I was so powerless, right? I was powerless because I couldn't control the narrative. I couldn't control the perception of me, because this was, once these people said those things, in today's world, as you've seen it with cancel culture, once something is said about someone, it is so hard for that to not be the case. It is now inscribed upon you like it's engraved in your flesh, and you'll never...
And also, we have to also say, ladies and gentlemen, that people's perceptions are often wrong.
Yeah.
What they perceive is not based on truth.
No,
It's based on illusion.
Right. This wasn't. This was based on something in my past that they used in the present to justify letting me go. And so that happens, and I call my pastors from back in that sent me. And they're going, what happened? And so then they call them, and then the Delaware people say, this is what happened. Did you know about this? And they go, my Virginia people go, I didn't know about this. They knew.
So they threw you under a bus as well.
They knew. And as much as I remember, I know I told at least one of them that all the stuff of my past. And then two, as later my counselor said, I gave them all the opportunity to probe more into my life, because I was very open about the sin that had happened in my life and that I did, that had been done to me. And they could have asked more questions. And I've never been someone who would shy away from telling people things. One of the reasons why I've learned through counseling, that's part of my problem, was oversharing. Yeah. So then essentially what it felt like was, you get the floor dropped out from underneath you from this church in Delaware. You're just basically now labeled a pariah from stage. And then your safety net, which was your sending church, is gone, because they go, well, we're going to have to rescind your ordination, and we'll work with you through this. But they never talked about how that was going to happen. And whoever was supposed to work with us kept dropping the ball. So it went from one, no one even called my wife, but two, hearing one conversation about rescinding my ordination and then never hearing from them again for months while we're trying to figure out what we're going to do. And I just lost both of the ways that I would ever even continue on as a pastor, because I lost both of my references. So now that life is gone. I'm unemployed in a state that I've not lived in. I don't have any friends or family.
You basically lost everything.
Kids. Yes, I lost all future of that. There's no longer that, right? And
how did your wife feel? I mean, obviously your wife...
It was terrible.
Was very supportive, but how did she feel through that?
It was way more traumatic for her, right? Because one, she had to watch her husband be completely defamed from stage. Two, she had terrible postpartum and she had no idea, because we had two kids back to back like that, and she didn't even know she had postpartum after one. Then we got pregnant again, and then now we're being let go from a church in a place that we don't know, and with people we don't know, and she's thinking, how am I supposed to solve this? Because I was becoming depressed and sad and anxious. She's thinking, what am I going to do? I need to help him. And so then she's taking all of the weight upon herself. And so it was just a terrible time for both of us. And as we tried to think through the future, all I had was myself, my family, and my faith, right? And I had to think.
Now, did it rattle your faith in any way, or rattle your wife's faith in any way?
So it rattled her more than mine,
right?
But it didn't rattle. So it didn't rattle my faith, but it did rattle my comfortability in the actual local church, established church, right? There's still a low level of anxiety anytime I walk into a church, even my home church, just because of what happened. It's just part of it. It was a traumatic place and a traumatic event.
In reality, what happened before with how you fell into, whatever it was, porn or anything else like that back in the days, I mean, it's nothing really compared to what other people have done out there. I mean, it really isn't.
No, but that is just the element there. And so
Mm.
so it was incredibly traumatic and shaking to her faith. And so we tried to think what we were going to do. And so my brother and my sister came alongside me and they said, look, my brother was at Microsoft, he's now at Google. My sister was at Cisco, still there. They said, look, why don't you try tech and remote and corporate, right? I mean, we'll pay better. You'll be able to do remote, you know. And I just said, all right, let's just put all my eggs in that basket and let's go all in. And so I had a lot of people come around me and very kindly help position me. And so then we moved down because we were trying to think, all right, we can't be in Delaware because it sucks. And now I'm a pariah. So I don't want to, like, people are going to know, no, that's him, right? Wasn't he that guy that they let go, right? It was going to follow
Yeah.
me if I stayed there. And
It
then
sticks with you. It sticks with you forevermore.
So then we said, all right, we're either going to live with your parents in Charlotte, North Carolina, or my parents in Pennsylvania.
Mm.
And her sister said, how about you do neither so you don't go insane and live with us in South Carolina, and because we have plenty of room. And so that's what we did. They didn't have any kids yet, and they let us move down there. And right before we moved down, I got an interview at Cisco, and so that was really good. And then when we moved down, I was able to secure that job at Cisco. But during those 5 weeks, I said I need to find counseling, right? And so one of the people from that sending church who said they didn't know, but I feel like I told them, did say, hey, find some counselors. Here's the network. Use that. And so I went there and I found a counselor and he was fantastic. Local counselor. He was amazing. Incredible. One of the best biblical counselors I think I've ever met in my entire life.
Give him a shout out. Give him a shout out.
Owensby. Stephen Owensby, I think is his name. Morningside Baptist, I think it's in Spartanburg, South Carolina. Stephen Owensby, he is a Elvis impersonator on the side, so he always keeps mutton
Is he
chops.
really?
Yeah,
he
keeps really big sideburns on it. It was incredible. But he did some of the most instrumental things in my life, which was show me you've been always controlling the narrative, and one of the symptoms is you overshare, so that you can constantly keep your stream of content to control the narrative, right? Now you have to stop that. You have to let things that are outside of your control be outside of your control. You have to stop trying to force things like Moses striking water from the rock instead of speaking water from the rock. You have to trust and stop, right? That was one.
And that's a difficult thing to do, especially what you've been through. A level of trust has now dissipated.
Especially when that was my entire life of manipulating every situation. Right?
I was going to say, exactly, because, I mean, let's face it, you manipulated trust in the way you wanted anyway.
Exactly. So I built up that habit. And then the other thing he said was, you have been wronged by these two churches because you gave them every opportunity to ask you all the questions that they would ever need to ask for them to get all the information that they said they didn't have. And that was huge for me. And he said, and they wronged your wife, and they've wronged you and your family. And this is going to be tough for you. And he was so gracious and kind to show me that there will be a place that will house us, that will welcome us. And so when we were going to this church down there, my sister-in-law and her husband were going to, we found one of their campuses, and he said, I want you to bring the campus pastor in, and we're going to talk about your whole story. And we're going to ask them, is it okay for him to be a member? And because you do not want another Delaware. You have to, the next place you go has to know everything, which sucked because once again, I can't control the narrative. And my counselor is there who knows everything, who's not going to let me control the narrative. So I have to completely be honest. And so I was honest, and the person said, okay, yeah, you're fine. And I went, wait, are you serious? And so for me and my wife to hear that we were welcomed into a place that would receive us with grace and kindness and not judge us in that way, right, was huge. It was massive. Now, it's not as if they've just been like, cool, great, you're everything. Like it's even been good. I mean, I play on the worship team because I'm a musician and I'm a songwriter. And I used to lead music as my job, as part of my job as a pastor. And they have yet to have me lead
love
music.
that part of it, don't you?
I do, but they have yet to have me lead music because I still want to see, is he a man of integrity? Is he someone who is, going to control the narrative? And it's been great. It's been great because it's been challenging to be forced to be a man of my word, and I can't settle into old habits. But so really the main things that I always try to tell about my story is when I was brought so low out of not being able to control anything, right? I had to come to terms with who I was. And be then now sure of who I am, right? I'm sure of who I am, my identity in the Lord, which is redeemed and it's saved and it's enabled to live for Him. And but also like how I'm gifted, right? Because the cool thing was one door was completely shut forever, at least in my opinion, forever, which is ministry, pastorate. But who I am isn't just Pastor Joel. Who I am isn't, my gifts aren't specifically only allowed to be housed within one organizational idea. And so,
And you have a different, I mean, what I know from you now is
yeah,
that you've taken that role, that ministerial role that you had. You no longer have it so much in the church as a pastor, but you have your own ministry, because that's what's fascinating. And you're using the trauma
yeah,
that you had now to help other people transform because of what you've gone through. So let's talk a little bit about your ministry now, because
yeah.
you're using what was negative as something positive to impact people.
Right. So yeah, what you're talking about is Viewpoint Leadership and Development. So it's a company I started with a friend here in Greenville, South Carolina. And it
Joshua
started
Trout, big shout out to you.
yes, shout out to
We know
Viewpoint
why
Leadership.
you were scared to come at the podcast when I was down there. Just let it be known, I know.
What? Why?
Because
Why?
he found out I was a medium. He probably didn't want
Shut
to
up.
turn
No,
up.
it's not.
Get
No,
off.
no,
I
no,
know.
no. No, no, no. No. So Josh and I started because we both had conversations about corporate American culture. And my wife was doing his website for this company he started, or is this idea of Viewpoint Leadership. And then when he heard about my idea and my thoughts about how we could change corporate culture for the better, why it's so bad right now, he said, I need you a part of this. And then it gave me the ground to take everything that had happened in my life and start this idea about kind of finding your mantra, which is essentially just the three, I believe, as someone who's manipulated enough people and worked enough angles, and then also seen in my
Well,
own life.
you had to find your mantra first before
Exactly.
you could. Yeah.
Right. And I learned the three, I believe, the most attractive attributes in people, which is certainty, it's positivity, and it's altruism. Right? Because in those moments when I was only me, I saw I was a complete, absolute burden to my wife because I was pessimistic and I was selfish, right? And what am I doing with my life? And then when I realized I could enter into corporate America in tech with no tech experience, if I just simply talked about my life experiences in a way that was positive and showed that I'm an altruistic person and that I'm certain that if you put me in this position, I will exceed your expectation.
And
that
you
was one of the
have,
things I
because
did.
you've risen up the ladder like within 2 years very, very quickly.
Right. So, and I think part of that happened because people see what grade I came in. So at Cisco, there's like one of the lowest grades you can come in is like a 6. And I came in with tons of leadership experience and belief, right? From pastoring and leading churches, right? And leading ministries and having my own podcast beforehand. Like I know how to speak. I know how to, I have tact, I have poise, and I know how to engage people as a former counselor, right? And so I know how people work. And so I came in as a 6 and people are going, what? So then I saw pretty clearly, because if you're someone who is sure of yourself, you can see does this line of path work for me? Does this pathway of my career work? No, my leader's not really someone who's going to move up. His leader has to wait for another person. I don't want to wait 14 years to get to something when I know that I can do it a different way. And I learned very quickly on when I was onboarded at Cisco, your career is your career. No one's going to do it for you. And I went, all right. So then I hit someone up and they said, hey, actually, I do have a job for you. So after a year, I went from a grade 6 to a grade 8 with a very big pay bump. And then that thing started to blow up because poor leadership, which is something we can talk about later, but poor leadership, terrible, toxic managerial mid-management.
Yeah.
And then so it blew up. And so the great thing about Cisco was, hey, if your role no longer exists or whatever, you can move, because they keep it. If it's not true, you have to wait a year. And so they make you wait a year. But then I learned some of the loopholes that they give you. Well, it didn't exist anymore. And I had been networking in supply chain. And so then after 4 months, I went into supply chain and got another promotion and another raise, right? So within less than 2 years, I got 2 promotions, which was unheard of. And it was just because I was continually embodying I am certain of myself and I'm positive about myself and that world around me, and I'm altruistic, which drew more people to want to talk to me and want me in rooms.
And is that your mantra, or what is your mantra for everybody?
Yeah. So my mantra, because it's the 3 characteristics, right? The 3 attributes is I am someone who, right? Which is that's your certainty statement, right? You wouldn't say I am someone who if you weren't about to say something you're very certain of, right? You would say I think I am, or I believe I am. There's none of that. It's I am someone who is energized by being refreshment to everyone and every interaction, no matter what. In that, I want to build people up. I want to edify them. I don't want people burdened. I don't want people broken down or drained. I just want people thinking, man, I cannot wait to talk to Joel again. He was such a refreshment, right? So I am someone who, positive statement, is energized by, loves doing, finds fulfillment in, is excited by, right? Those are positive things, not I am someone who is drained by, or I'm someone who doesn't like, or I'm someone who is frustrated by. Why do you not like that? Because you already know if that's the first thing you're going to say to me, you're negative and I don't want to deal with you. You're going to drain me, right? The first thing you say to me is you're certain that you're frustrated by this. What if that happens? Then I'm going to have to deal with frustrated John, who's going to be a difficult person, right? So when you're interviewing or networking, and the whole goal is to get someone to say, I like you and I'm interested in you, which is a psychological term called sunder. Everyone's living a vivid life just as much as you are. How do you get them to want to enter into your vivid life? You need to make your vivid life attractive without manipulating them. Something that I've had to turn a new leaf, right? And so showing them, hey, actually, John, I like how you said you're energized by being a refreshment. What do you mean by that, right? How have you done that in your life? How have you done that as a medium? How have you done that as an author? That's really cool. Let me hear more. So it's a simple.
I remember when you asked me what mine was, and that was kind of that gelled us even closer together when I mentioned about sowing seeds.
Because it is sowing seeds, right? That's interesting, and it's artsy, it's poetic, because it invites you. It in a good way leaves something to be desired.
That's right,
because it's good to leave something for people to desire more of. And I've learned that. I learned that now, seeing as the positive way of gaming the system of life is not to manipulate people and to control the narrative. It is simply to live your life in such a way that is secure, that is certain, and that is compelling and attractive to other people. But it's not because you want them to enter into your life so that they'll enter into your life. It's because you love what you are doing and you engage with what you're doing so much and you engage with your passion so much that they can't help but want to enter into your life. And it was this beautiful kind of shifting of it's no longer manipulating the people in the situations. It is simply manipulating my way of viewing myself and the world around me in a way that now has shifted other people's perspectives of me.
Yeah.
And frees me up to then enter rooms that I never thought I could enter into. Like case in point, I just had a senior vice president of Cisco. You have to remember, these billion-dollar companies. These people are making a lot of money, John. Money that I'll never hope to make, maybe one day, but never. I mean, just more than I've ever made in my lifetime already, and they make it in 1 year.
Yeah.
And I, in
or
one
even a
interaction,
month.
in 6 messages, got her to agree to be my sponsor and my mentor at Cisco.
Wow.
Right? And people go, why only you would be the person? You're so bold and why would you do that? That takes a lot of guts. And I go, no, it doesn't. Because I know the value that I add, and I know that I need someone else to see that. Someone who has more influence.
I think you've hit on something that is a massive failure in leadership, but also a massive issue in the world is that people don't value themselves.
Yes, they don't.
They don't think that they bring value no matter how small or how big. And that is a massive problem. And I love the fact that you say that you know your value. And that's anybody who's listening, ladies and gentlemen, unless you know your value, you're not going to get anywhere. You need to know and own your value.
Exactly, because no one is going to own it for you, right? So think again, sunder. Everyone is living just as vivid of a life as you are. John is going to turn off this podcast. He's going to do whatever. He's going to send this to the editor. It's his life. I cannot make John live his life for me. Right? I can try. That's the manipulation. And I saw what that got me. It got me fired multiple times, and it got me without a job and just depressed.
Not a good way to go, obviously.
Right? And living through trauma, and my wife living through trauma. Okay. So I have seen the furthest extent of trying to manipulate people in the life around you to fit what you want to do. It will always crash and burn, and there will always be collateral damage. But the beautiful thing is, but John likes what I'm talking about because I am talking about it in a way that is sure, and I'm positive, and I'm altruistic because it's for other people. And so he knows he's not going to manipulate me because he wants to see other people succeed. I can trust him in that, right?
Yes.
It gets rid of okay, what's this going to be, John? hey, let's connect. You all the LinkedIn people that annoy us on all the time. Hey, let's connect.
Daily.
We have things in common. And I'm going, shut up. You just want to pitch. I've started to say that now. I've literally said, if the next message out of your mouth is a pitch, I'm blocking you. And how many times have they automated sent it? It's hilarious. And then I blocked them because I'm like, I know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And so that's the difference, right? And I love that
there's no connection. There's more disconnection than
exactly.
connection.
And then also too, if you don't know yourself, let's say you're a leader, if you're not sure of yourself and you don't know yourself, you are going to harm the people underneath you. And the sad reality is because you're unable to be secure in who you are, you're unable to be positive and altruistic, you are going to ruin, and I'm just going to say it bluntly, you're going to ruin the work life of some of the people that work for you. These people spend.
So what is the? I mean, let's jump into that because I think that's important. From let's go into this leadership side of things because that is it's a big issue not only in corporate America but in general in life, because there's leaders that don't exist in corporate America, but they may have their own companies, they may be entrepreneurs, or they may lead groups or whatever it is. But there's this culture where I think leadership is misunderstood. So let's jump into a little bit of that, because you've found a lot of problems since you have transformed yourself and experienced negative leadership, positive leadership, and kind of leadership.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's interesting. So from my original time, right, I started in Cisco. I was a lower grade. And what often happens is these guys who have never been leaders, these people who have never been people managers before, are put in positions. And what I would always see is, and this is just part of, I think it's also part of the corporate system, is there's still more an emphasis placed on their actual output as individual contributors than the production they are able to do and see within the people underneath them in like a growth standpoint, not what they do for the bottom end of Cisco, but what are they do? How are they feeling? Right. And because there's a disconnect between those middle managers and lower level managers and those people, there is a major disconnect between the highest level of leadership at those companies. And when they say, we care about you, here's a day for you, those low level people who are jaded go, hey, have fun going back on your private jet, flying to your Atlanta office, making millions of dollars. Shut up. You don't understand. Right. And the problem isn't just the disconnect between these two people. It's mainly the disconnect between these two. And that's what I saw a lot. So I've seen people who'd never managed before. I saw my first manager. He was a great guy, but bless his heart, he didn't manage everyone as best as he could. He did a great job and he was a great individual contributor. But the problem though also was he had these expectations on himself as an individual contributor to do so much and then care about the development of the people underneath him. Then I went to my second manager.
He was burnt out before he even could lead.
It wasn't even burnout. He just didn't have the bandwidth to think about that, right? He didn't have the bandwidth to then have the ability to work on that as a manager. And then what do? They say, all right, well, we'll have you do like a leader seminar or a leadership training course. Oh, great. You added another thing to that person's already busy calendar. Yeah, that was the solution. Great job. Real smart development of your people. Don't get me started with that with companies. So then I go to another leader who was one of the most stereotypical narcissists I've ever met in my life. And I used to be a counselor, so I can say that. I mean, the dude could not ever see that anything he did was wrong. To this day, he has been moved, I think, 4 times after our team blew up. And he's basically being moved around to be fired. That is what happens in corporate America. And he was, Joel, if you do not do this, this affects me. This affects my mortgage. This affects my kids' college. And I'm going, do not put your pressures and burden on my experience
and also utilizing guilt to manipulate what he needs.
Exactly. He was a narcissist. It was all about him. You were just there to fill his needs and his means, right? Well, guess what? His boss, the VP, was in competition with another senior director, VP level person, and the team that I left. And this is the politics that I've seen so much is who's going to play the game better? Because you're kind of both doing similar things. This happened actually twice now in my experience in 2.5 years, funnily enough. Well, this guy played the game just a little bit better. She didn't execute, and she also wasn't a strong presence of leader. And so what happened was She gets she gets moved and let go. Her team is dissolved. All of
Oh,
us, right? All of us living vivid lives are now said, "Hey, you're going to do this now. You're going to move on to a different team." So I'm 32. I was 31 at the time. These people are in their 40s, in their 50s, and they're being told, "Hey, guess what? You're doing something else now." Oh, okay. So then you're moved to a different team, and then now you have to learn from different people. And every time you're under these different level leaders, they have their own agendas. They have their own way of viewing things. And so when you get put in a new team, specifically in corporate America, what ends up happening is you're waiting for the time in which they have settled, the dust has settled, and they get to put their agenda in, which could mean you no longer have a job, right? Talk about how are you going to be resilient when you know when you've just been moved, there is a looming potential let go or even more major of a change.
because they
And so
want to come in and make a stamp of authority and clean up house, essentially,
every
their own
time,
way.
right?
Yeah.
And so I've seen it now this time when in supply chain we had a new VP. He came in. Well, very similarly, underneath him, there were these two people, senior managers, senior directors, kind of doing similar things. And because we had merged teams before, they were kind of on the same level. Well, who's going to win out? This guy did. So this guy who was my senior director and my boss was under him, they're gone, and now I'm under this team, right? Now I'm doing something else that I didn't think I was going to be doing when I just spent more time learning this thing that I was doing, right? And all the while, though, the reason why I feel like I've been okay is because I learned very quickly on, especially in that really terrible, toxic relationship with that one manager who was a narcissist, that I cannot trust my career into someone else other than myself. It's not a I can't trust my career in other people's lives. Everyone sucks. It's just no one is going to give you that same investment because they are still consumed with their own lives. I have yet to meet a leader in my time at Cisco, when it's only been 2.5 years, but my time even in the church and in corporate America, I've yet to meet someone that said, I want only what's best. I don't care about me. I only care about you. And I think I had actually one of them.
So what you're saying is that there's a lack of altruism and leadership in corporate
Yes.
America.
And actually, I will say the last one, my last boss, his name was Michael Harris. He was moved. He was incredible in that way. Incredibly altruistic, so kind, but to a fault. And because of that, he was moved because his team wasn't necessarily maybe getting everything done that they should, right? So it was different in that way. And so because of that, he was moved. And so I saw that his own ability or his altruism wasn't seen as beneficial for the business. So
So how do you change that, Joel? How do you change that in corporate culture now? Because that's one of your passions. But it seems to me that you're kind of like flogging a dead horse.
Yeah. So I think that the way to do it is this. I think that one, kind of similar to my situation, I don't want people to have to go to rock bottom to then go out and come out on the other end, right? I want people to just, hey, without having to go through trauma and counseling, let's just do this. Let's spend a little bit more time doing business with who you are, thinking about who you are. Who are you? What do you love? What are you passionate about? What are you skilled in? Okay. And now how do we talk about that in a way that's going to bring other people and want them to be brought into your life, right? That's just your mantra. Okay. Then everything from that builds upon that. That's the foundation. So now, okay, this is who you are. So it is, I'm someone who is energized by being refreshment. Okay. How does that relate to your time as a business process manager in supply chain, or a technical program manager, or a COO of a leadership development company, or a gym owner for CrossFit, right? How is that one-to-one? It's making the connections between who you are and what you do, because so much of people's lives and their identity is in what they do, not who they are, right? So that is the one major fix, okay? So your refreshment, how have you seen that in what you do at this gym? Oh, this, or this company, I've seen this. Okay, how have you not seen it? Well, this. Okay, you're not being true to who you are. You're letting selfishness and manipulation, you're letting that now be the kind of like the in-between from the A to the B. You're adding like a B to the C now. It has to go through the lens of, well, how can this serve me? No. That's not that, right? If the world is going to say, sorry, screw you, you're altruistic, let them say it, because eventually, if enough people do that, you're now the prevailing culture. They're the minority. So that's one of the ways that I build upon it with people is, okay, now connect it to your resume. this piece of paper that everyone goes, this is who I am. No. It's just who you are lived out in these contexts. It's not who you are, it's what you do. But make it connect to who you are. All right. Now, the jobs you're looking at, how could who you are succeed in those jobs? Well, you need to know what those jobs mean, what they do, what those companies mean, right? You have to spend more time now to connect yourself, who you are, with the world around you. And what I've seen is just a little bit more of intention in that way goes crazy long further down the road and enabling you to do more things than you ever thought you'd do. It's like I do Olympic lifting coaching on the side, and I see a lot of people in CrossFit who just spend 6 weeks spending 2 more days worth of time just learning movements and stuff, make 50-pound jumps in their weights and stuff just because they spent a little bit more of time. Not every day 24/7, just a little bit more time on something makes you that much better and more able to talk about it. It's the same thing with you in your life. If you just spend a little bit more time working with me, we'll make your mantra, then we'll build onto that. I've seen people say, man, I entered into that interview and I left it feeling like I said everything I wanted to. I never once felt nervous. I never once felt anxious. I felt good about what I did, right? And if I get the job, I get it. If I don't care because I was true to who I was. Rather than a month earlier when he said, I just was so nervous and I'm really upset that I'm just so bummed. Why won't anyone hire me? It's like, because the right person doesn't understand who you are yet, right? And
it's almost like that analogy of you're on a ship and you chart that course just a degree differently, and before you know it, you can be on a whole new island.
Exactly, and you never know, right? And that's the other thing too, is the immediacy that people want to see. So much of life and what I've experienced in my time in corporate, even just networking, it is a long game, and you have to be resilient. So case in point, I had an interview for a role. I thought I did really, really well in it. It was for a chief of staff role. I had the day, I was on a Wednesday. The next day, I had another interview for another role that I was doing and a conversation with someone from Glassdoor asking for my opinion about how they're engaging us influencers and whatever. And I hear back right before all that I didn't get the job. Okay, well, and then I had a meeting with my manager. And then I had a meeting with the people from Glassdoor. And then I had my other interview. And I had to be able to go, okay, well, that didn't work out. But I need to then get myself in order and put just as good a foot forward as I did the day before. And the only way to do that, the only way to be resilient is when you are sure of who you are, when you're certain, and when you're positive and you're altruistic. Because those are when things actually do brush off your shoulders, right? But if you aren't certain, everything is going to feel like an arrow, and eventually you're dead. You can only survive so many of those arrows, right? So, but this way, I've got the armor, and I can go, no, it's fine. I'm deflecting it. Okay. It's not deflecting it to repress it. It's just saying that's fine. It's not part of my journey right now. And maybe it is later on down the road, like we were talking about before the podcast. Maybe all the stuff that I'm working on, writing the book for this with Mantra, I wasn't getting it done yet because I haven't met just the right people yet who are going to be advocates of that and support it and fund it in those ways, right? You never know. But if you're only operating in the tyranny of the urgent, right, then you will never really truly see the beautiful outcome that could happen if you just stayed the course, because you're going to constantly course correct. And it's not good. You're going to be like an F1 driver, like you're saying, rather than someone who's steering a tanker.
Yeah, exactly. So now what you offer with your mantra that you've set up, because I want to say that you're not exactly doing career coaching, but you're you're helping to I would say redevelop or reignite leaders that don't even know they're leaders.
I would agree. I would say that I have seen some people who were incredibly discouraged that they got let go and then revitalized in their view of their outlook on their life, right? Their hope returned, and they see, oh, actually, I have a lot of value, right? And then it's revitalizing and re-energizing leaders that never thought they could be leaders. It's giving direction to high-level leaders that they just didn't have. It's that cue that you give to an Olympic lifter that now means the difference between 20 and 30 pounds, right? Just that little fix that's all they needed, right? And the great thing about it is it's so easy to do, right? You sit down with me, I ask you questions. I come up with your mantra. You tell me whether you like it or not. We work on it until you like it, and then it's yours. And then it's okay. Hey, John, connect this to your resume. I want you to spend time, find a couple bullets on your resume, and I want you to go, this is my mantra. And it makes me think about a time when I was da, 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 da. And I want give me the you lived out in that bullet point. And then now you're starting to make that. And then now it's just muscle memory, right? I know my mantra so much. I can say it so easily. I can even say people's mantras so easily now. It's funny. People say, why don't you interview for me? I'm like, if they didn't know what you looked like and I would, because give you your mantra in your resume and I could just look at your resume and go, okay, if this is their mantra, this is how I'd answer this question. And I would use that instance or that example. And I think the more people live within that, the certainty, the positivity, and the altruism, the more that they will have a better outlook on life. And life just won't be as droll and as depressing, right? Because you're not
So let's have a couple of examples of people that you've helped without naming them if they don't want to be named, but with their mantras and how it's transformed them. Because there's going to be people out there, Joel, that are listening and they're like, you know what, I'm in that place just now, and I need to connect with this dude to be able to change and transform and learn from what he's done.
I think my kids stole my notebook.
For those of you guys that are listening and not watching the video, you can see he's frantically running about his office trying to find his notebook for his kid.
Oh my gosh. That's okay. So what I would say is I had a couple people that, let me look them up right now too. I want to make sure I'm true to their mantras. If I had my notebook, I could do it. All right. So one of them was this. Right here. Okay. There it is. So this was someone's. And this was someone who has just been, she has felt like she has been constantly tossed around and never really given the shot to really long-term show what she can do. So this was her mantra. I am someone who's energized by the grind within the journey of life. In that, I believe that I am my best self and can be trusted to deliver the best results in the lives of others and the life of the business when I can marry my work ethic with the collaborative culture of the business or within a collaborative culture, right? So what that shows someone is, give me the shot to have a more time, right? And it also comes out of the frustrations that she's had. No one ever really gives me the shot to just really show, just let me do hard work for good hard work, not just, one opportunity. Sorry, no, it didn't really work out, right?
Yeah.
And
what happened to her? What did she get success from that?
Yeah, so she's had a couple interviews, and one of them has gone really well. And so she's in the midst of that interview process. And she even said she's felt as if those interviews have gone better than they have in the past, right? Or this one.
That's brilliant.
This guy's a marketing guy, and his is this. I am someone who finds fulfillment in keeping the narrative less about pedigree and more about purpose, in that I strive to always own when I need to grow and to acknowledge others with the why who may be discouraged. Meaning, I acknowledge others, or encourage others with the why. Here's the why we're doing this. And I know that you're probably discouraged because you're like, what are we doing? I'm confused, right? And it's not about it's not about the pedigree, it's about the purpose. It doesn't matter what level you are. Everyone always needs to be reminded, why are we doing this? Right? So that was his. And
passion
then
and purpose.
One of my favorites was, let's see, this guy. This guy is from the UK, former British Army. And I have it written down, so I don't have his. But he was the one that said he was so nervous beforehand. And then he didn't get the job, but man, he finished that interview and he said, and I felt so confident and I felt so good about what I did in my interview that I just.
So your mantra thing that you've developed, I mean, this is not something that you and Joshua developed. This is yours.
Yeah.
It not only helps them find out, own who they are.
Yeah.
But it gives them confidence and courage.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's not there is going to be parts of your life that are not in your control. Right? And confidence and courage isn't simply saying, I know the outcome. Confidence and courage come from uncertainty, but being able to take a risk. That's when I think confidence and courage is really shown. Saying, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen, but I know I have 2 feet and I know I can keep walking. Right? I don't know if the next part is going to be swimming or the next part's going to be uphill or downhill. I know what I have. And so we'll see what happens when I get there. And I want to rise to the occasion. And I think that's just the hard part about a lot of young leaders, or you're just leaders. They're told a lot in conversations, like with maybe you and I or other people, and they'll say, man, you have a lot of potential, right? I've been told this a lot now in corporate America. You have a lot of potential. I love it. I love this mantra stuff. It's really wonderful. And then that's it, right? I think a lot of young leaders are frustrated because so much of the success that people have had, older people that have had, it was, yes, hard work, but then someone did give you a shot. And I believe that there is a disconnect between the older generation and the younger generation, where the older generation says, I had to grind for what I have. Yes, but like my old friend that I was telling you about before, he said, I have had the luckiest life of I am the luckiest guy in the world. Things have actually been thrown into my lap. Now I work hard, but things have been thrown in my lap. And I said, thank you for finally acknowledging that. Because at some point in everyone's life, something was thrown into their lap. I don't care if you are a multi-billionaire or you're like a CEO of a low.
You've hit on something that is so poignant and so real. And I've been saying this for ages. All these people that say, hey, you can go on my course, you'll get 6 figures. You know, any big marketer, any big entrepreneur or millionaire, you can do this. I did this. They forget not only where they came from, but they forget that when they were going on that journey, somebody opened the door and they took the choice to walk through.
Exactly.
There has to be a point where the door is open for you. You land at the opportunity.
Yeah, because that person owned the house that had the door for you to walk through. Right? There has always been one point when someone had the house, and figuratively in your life, that you needed to enter into that new stage of life, and they simply said, I'll open the door. No one in their life, I do not believe, and just history can prove me wrong, but no one has ever, only by their own effort, hard work, has ever opened that other person's door. I don't think so. And so I wish more older leaders would say, that was given to me, I'm going to give you a shot.
Yeah.
Right. And the problem though is on the other side,
and that's altruistic. That goes back to what you're saying as well. That's altruism.
And then here's the flip side. The people my age are negative. No one's giving me a shot. No one believes in me. Why won't anyone do this? This is all that they hear. I believe I can do this. I'm better than this person. Why am I not in this position? Why have I not been given a promotion? I'm going to tell you right now, people my age or younger, Gen Z, Gen Alphas, when they come up, like, that's the negative part, right? If the 3 most attractive attributes that I believe are in people, certainty, positivity, and altruism, you can't expect for the altruism to come to you if you're not living out the positivity. Right? So that is
amen to that. Absolutely.
Right? Yeah, we're not without fault. People my generation and younger, they're negative. So why would an older person who has the ability to open the door to someone they don't know is going to be good in their house? Right? If you're like, you know what, it is raining out here, why won't you open the door? I'm soaked, I am cold, you want me to die? I'm going, okay, can you lower the energy down a little bit? You're just, I don't want that in my house. Right? So that's fair. That is a fair point to make. But I still believe both sides have to take the leap of faith. You need to be positive. They need to be more altruistic. Right? So.
Absolutely. I think, positivity is missing a lot in this life. Everybody wants. See, I give an example like this. It hammers down with rain and people go, oh my God, it's raining. And they like, and I kind of like, oh my gosh, it's raining. It's awesome. It's as simple as that. Or the winter's coming in. It's so cold. I can't wait for the sun. And then the sun comes in. Oh my God, it's too hot. I can't wait for it. Why not just be positive and enjoy every aspect of life, because life is a miracle.
Amen.
And you get to live that miracle 24 hours a day, and it's up to you how you do that. God gives you a gift every morning that you wake up. You get to live another miracle. And if you don't live it, that's whose fault is that? It's not God's, it's yours.
Ooh, that's good. That's true.
It is so true. Listen, Joel, before we finish off, we've been going on for about just over an hour now, and
sorry.
I went, no, listen, we could go on and on for ages, but I'm mindful of the time for people. I don't want to be sit for 2 hours and listen, but we'll definitely have you back on. But give me something that people that are out there, Obviously, they can connect with you and everything else. But what is the biggest gift that you can give them right now that would help them own their mantra and change?
I would say the two things that I ask people, you can ask yourself right now. What drives you and what drains you? Just asking those two questions will give you some of the best insight into your life. And I don't settle for surface. What drives me? I like information and being in details. Okay, yeah, but like, give an example. When was the time you got to do your whatever drives you, right? Because that helps. I'll ask people, what drives you? Blah blah blah. Oh, when have you been able to do that? Or give me a time when you've been used that. Okay, same thing. What drains you? Micromanaging. Okay, you and everyone else. Congratulations. How original. What about micromanaging? When's it been a time? Right? So I would say there's two questions. What drives you? When's been a time that you've been able to utilize that? What drains you? When's been a time that that's happened, right? And what drains you? What if you had to sit through it, do it, or take part in it, you'd rather kill yourself by walking into oncoming traffic. Like, that's what drains you. That needs to be very potent negative emotion, right? That's okay. But then the drive, what's positive, right? I mean, when you do it, you feel like, yes, life is good. That's the difference. So that's it. Just ask yourself those two questions, just that little bit of insight will help you.
I love that, Joel. And I love the fact that you have come from all the trauma that you've had, that you were exposed on everything. And anybody who's listening out there, it just goes to show you that there's a blessing in disguise, and everything, every darkness, there's always a divine light that's ready to shine. And would you say that, your negative experience, the experience that you have gone through, would you change it, or would you accept it for what it's made you now?
I think the only reason I would say I would wish I would change it is just what it did to my wife, right?
Well, that's fair. That's a fair point. I love
Joanna so much, and I hated that. But we both gained such deep insight into ourselves and our life through counseling that we never would have if we didn't go through it. So that's why I would say I won't change it. I hated to see my wife go through that. But now on the flip side, our marriage is so much better. We ourselves are so much better people and believers ourselves. And so, I mean, I believe it. It's something that I want to get tattooed eventually, and probably be my last tattoo is post tenebris lux, which just means after darkness light. It comes from scripture, but it's so true. There will always be
which is in my book, and the logo is actually from darkness to light.
Yep. There will always be light after darkness. After darkness always comes light.
Joel, how can people get in touch with you, my friend?
LinkedIn is probably one of the best ones. So LinkedIn, you
don't pitch him, for God's sake.
So Joel-Arcieri. So it'd be linkedin.com/Joel-Arcieri. You can find me on Instagram. Joel Conwell is there. That's my middle name. But LinkedIn is probably the best way to contact with me. You can also go to the website. Theviewpointco.com is our website. And so you can even book some services that way if you want to just go straight to booking. But if you just want to talk to me, hit me up on LinkedIn.
And also, you have, give a shout out to your podcast as well, which I was very honored to be a guest on. We had a lot of fun on that.
The View from Up Here. This is the View from Up Here podcast. You find it, I think, best just find it on YouTube because you get to watch it. I like watching them more.
Well, we'll link it. We'll link it in the show notes because I was on it and it was a great interview. So
it was so fun.
It was awesome.
Was just great. Oh, I was such a good time, and this was a great time too.
It was brilliant. It was brilliant, and we need to do a lot more of it. Yes. Joel, thank you for being a guest on 21 Virtues. I nearly said my other podcast there about 21 Virtues, and definitely want to have you back at some point to help others and maybe go a little bit deeper into this leadership aspect of it. Guys, if you've got a question, if you want to know what your mantra is, or if you're just stuck with knowing who you are, then send us in the questions. Let's get it to Joel or connect with him. And you've learned from his story. He's a pastor who even likes a medium like me, for God's sake. I mean, that's just like that's like it's never heard. Like I feel as if I've conquered something.
All the pastors are calling me a heretic right now.
I know, I know. Yeah. They got pitchforks if they find out who I am standing outside my door.
Oh my God.
This is but you are very altruistic, and I love the fact that you own who you are, and you turn around and you say, you know what, I screwed up in my days, and I was a manipulator, and boom. But this is who I am now. So if you really want to learn from someone who's been in the trenches, this is how you do it. And make sure to check out their podcast and connect with him. Guys, thank you very much for listening. Send in all your questions and tune in to the next episode very soon. God bless.
Cheers, y'all.